Hey church, it's March 23rd, 2020. Corona pandemic has been going on, and I've been feeling like a lazy pastor. I've been doing my own private study, but I haven't been able to interact with most of you as much as I would like, so I decided I would include you in some of my private study during Lent. Instead of eating food, I've been feasting on God's Word, and I'm about to start the book of Deuteronomy. And I recently came upon John Wesley's notes on the Old Testament, and they have been interesting. I started using them in Numbers, and now I'm to the beginning of Deuteronomy. And so I thought it would be interesting just to give this opportunity to anybody who wants it to read along with me in Deuteronomy. And I'll, from time to time, consult John Wesley's notes on the Old Testament. Not many people have read that, I don't think. I was able to find it online for $1. Let's dive in. According to John Wesley, the notes on the fifth book of Moses called Deuteronomy. The Greek interpreters call this book Deuteronomy, that is the second law or a second edition of the law, because it is a repetition of many of the laws, as well as much of the history contained in the three foregoing books. They to whom the first law was given were all dead, and a new generation sprung up to whom God would have it repeated by Moses himself, that it might make the deeper impression upon them. It begins with a brief rehearsal of the most remarkable events that had befallen them since they came from Mount Sinai. In the fourth chapter begins a pathetic exhortation to obedience. From the 12th to the 27th are repeated many particular laws, enforced in the 27th and 28th with promises and threatenings, which are formed into a covenant. Chapter 29 and 30. Care is taken in chapter 31 to perpetuate the remembrance of these things among them, particularly by a song. Chapter 32 concluded with a blessing. Chapter 33. All this was delivered by Moses to Israel in the last month of his life. See how busy this great and good man was to do good when he knew his time was short. So, the fifth book of Moses called Deuteronomy, chapter 1. These be the words which Moses spake unto all Israel on this side Jordan, in the wilderness, in the plain over against the Red Sea, between Paran and Tophel, and Laban, and Hazeroth, and Dizahab. There are 11 days' journey from Horeb by the way of Mount Seir unto Kadesh Barnea. And it came to pass in the 40th year, in the 11th month, on the first day of the month, that Moses spake unto the children of Israel, according unto all that the Lord had given him in commandment unto them. After he had slain Sihon the king of the Amorites, which dwelt in Heshbon, and Og the king of Bashan, which dwelt at Ashtaroth and Edrei, on this side Jordan, in the land of Moab, began Moses to declare this law, saying, The Lord our God spake unto us in Horeb, saying, Ye have dwelt long enough in this mount. Turn you and take your journey, and go to the mount of the Amorites, and unto all the places nigh thereunto, in the plain, in the hills, and in the vale, and in the south, and by the seaside, to the land of the Canaanites, and unto Lebanon, unto the great river, the river Euphrates. Behold, I have set the land before you. Go in and possess the land, which the Lord sware unto your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give unto them and to their seed after them. And I spake unto you at that time, saying, I am not able to bear you myself alone. The Lord your God hath multiplied you, and behold, ye are this day as the stars of heaven for multitude. The Lord God of your fathers make you 1,000 times so many more as ye are, and bless you as he hath promised you. How can I myself alone bear your cumbrance and your burden and your strife? Take you wise men and understanding, and known among your tribes, and I will make them rulers over you. And he answered me and said, The thing which thou hast spoken is good for us to do. So I took the chief of your tribes, wise men and known, and made them heads over you, captains over thousands, and captains over hundreds, and captains over 50s, and captains over 10s, and officers among your tribes. And I charged your judges at that time, saying, Hear the causes between your brethren, and judge righteously between every man and his brother, and the stranger that is with them. Ye shall not respect persons in judgment, but ye shall hear the small as well as the great. Ye shall not be afraid of the face of man, for the judgment is God's. And the cause that is too hard for you, bring it unto me, and I will hear it. And I commanded you at that time all the things which ye should do. And when we departed from Horeb, we went through all the great and terrible wilderness which ye saw by the way of the mountain of the Amorites, as the Lord our God commanded us. And we came to Kadesh Barnea. And I said unto you, Ye are come unto the mountain of the Amorites, which the Lord our God doth give unto us. Behold, the Lord thy God hath set the land before thee. Go up and possess it, as the Lord God of thy fathers hath said unto thee. Fear not, neither be discouraged. And ye came near unto me, every one of you, and said, We will send men before us, and they shall search out the land, and bring us word again by what way we must go up, and into what cities we shall come. And the saying pleased me well, and I took 12 men of you, one of a tribe. And they turned and went up into the mountain, and came unto the valley of Eshcol, and searched it out. And they took of the fruit of the land in their hands, and brought it down unto us, and brought us word again, and said, It is a good land which the Lord our God doth give us. Notwithstanding, you would not go up, but rebelled against the commandment of the Lord your God. And ye murmured in your tents, and said, Because the Lord hated us, he hath brought us forth out of the land of Egypt, to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites, to destroy us. Whither shall we go up? Our brethren have discouraged our hearts, saying, The people is greater and taller than we. The cities are great and walled up to heaven. And moreover, we have seen the sons of the Anakim there. Then I said unto you, Dread not, neither be afraid of them. The Lord your God, which goeth before you, he shall fight for you, according to all that he did for you in Egypt before your eyes. And in the wilderness, where thou hast seen how that the Lord thy God bare thee, as a man doth bear his son, in all the way that you went, until ye came into this place. Yet in this thing ye did not believe the Lord your God, who went in the way before you to search you out in a place to pitch your tents in fire by night, to show you by what way you should go, and in a cloud by day. And the Lord heard the voice of your words, and was wroth, and sware, saying, Surely there shall not one of these men of this evil generation see that good land, which I swear to give unto your fathers. Save Caleb the son of Jephunneh, he shall see it, and to him will I give the land that he hath trodden upon, and to his children, because he hath wholly followed the Lord. Also the Lord was angry with me for your sakes, saying, Thou shalt not go in thither. But Joshua the son of Nun, which standeth before thee, he shall go in thither. Encourage him, for he shall cause Israel to inherit it. Moreover, your little ones, which ye said should be a prey, and your children, which in that day had no knowledge between good and evil, they shall go in thither, and unto them will I give it, and they shall possess it. But as for you, turn you, and take your journey into the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea. Then ye answered and said unto me, We have sinned against the Lord. We will go up and fight, according to all that the Lord our God commanded us. And when ye had girded on every man his weapons of war, ye were ready to go up into the hill. And the Lord said unto me, Say unto them, Go not up, neither fight, for I am not among you, lest you be smitten before your enemies. So I spake unto you, and ye would not hear, but rebelled against the commandment of the Lord, and went presumptuously up into the hill. And the Amorites which dwelt in that mountain came out against you, and chased you as bees do, and destroyed you in Seir, even unto Hormah. And ye returned and wept before the Lord, but the Lord would not hearken to your voice, nor give ear unto you. So ye abode in Kadesh many days, according unto the days that ye abode there. Thus ends the first chapter. Let's see what John Wesley had to say about this chapter. So first, the preface, fixing the time and place, verses 1 through 5, is what we covered. Israel commanded to march, verses 6 through 8. Judges were provided, verses 9 through 1 and 3. That doesn't make sense to me. They come to Kadesh Barnea in verse 19:21. Spies were sent, their report, their people's murmuring, verses 22 through 33. The sentence passed upon them, verses 34 through 40. They are smitten by the Amorites and remain at Kadesh, verses 41 through 46. So this is what John Wesley does in almost every verse. He summarizes how it's laid out, verse by verse. All right, so in verse 1, it says, "These be the words which Moses spake unto all Israel on this side of Jordan." He clarifies all Israel, means namely by the heads or elders of the several tribes who were to communicate these discourses to all the people. So yeah, they didn't have big amplification systems back then. He wasn't able to broadcast his message. Rather, he just told it to the heads and elders who then disseminated this message to the people. So also there's this phrase, in the wilderness. Wesley stipulates it's in the plain of Moab, as may appear by comparing with verse 5 and Numbers 22, verse 1, and chapter 34, verse 8. He uses Roman numerals. It takes me a minute. The word Suf here used does not signify the Red Sea, which is commonly called Yam Suf. This is Hebrew he's talking about, and which was too great a distance, but some other place now unknown to us, as also most of the following places are so called from the reeds or flags or rushes, which that word signifies, that grew in or near it. All right, so talks about how it's between Paran and Tophel and Laban and Hazeroth and Dizahab. This is still verse 1. When he talks about Paran, Wesley says not that Numbers 10, verse 12, which there and elsewhere is called the wilderness of Paran, and which was too remote, but some other place called the same name. Laban, Hazeroth, and Dizahab, these places seem to be the several bounds, not of the whole country of Moab, but of the plain of Moab, where Moses now was. Now, a lot of this seems really boring until you really try and track out where they were and what they were doing. And it gets complicated for reasons that are self-evident. It seems that there were multiple regions called by the same name sometimes, or there was a sloppy recording, but a lot of this was already recorded in the book of Numbers. Now, I've been listening to this guy, Michael Heiser. I just happened to have his book out. I wasn't thinking it would come to this, but in the Hebrew, Yam Suf, there's also Yam Soph. It's spelled exactly the same, but it means two different things. One is the Red Sea, that's Yam Soph, but then Yam Suf, I might be getting this confused, but one is the sea at the edge of the world, and that was where the great showdown with Pharaoh and his army was with the Israelites. And so I've heard Michael Heiser, he has a podcast called Naked Bible, and he talks about how it's probably the sea at the edge of the world and not the Red Sea. But usually whenever it's Red Sea, it's Sea of Reeds, and then we just translate it Red Sea. So anyway, he's just trying to help us get clear about the location here. In verse 2, it said there are 11 days' journey from Horeb by way of Mount Seir unto Kadesh Barnea. So here Wesley says for that, there are 11 days' journey. So this is added to shew that the reason why the Israelites in so many years were advanced no farther from Horeb than to these plains, which were not the distance of the places, but because of their rebellions. So with respect to Kadesh Barnea, he says this was not far from the borders of Canaan. So Horeb is another name for Mount Sinai, which is not made clear here, but whenever it's talking about the Israelites leaving Horeb, they're leaving the place where God gave the covenant to Moses and the Israelites. So in verse 3, and it came to pass in the 40th year, in the 11th month, on the first day of the month. Here Wesley says, with respect to the 11th month, which was but a little before his death, all that the Lord had given him in commandment. That's another phrase. That Moses spake unto the children of Israel according to all that the Lord had given him in commandment unto them. So with respect to all that the Lord had given him in commandment, it shows not only that what he now delivered was in substance the same with what had formerly been commanded, but that God now commanded him to repeat it. He gave this rehearsal and exhortation by divine direction. Of course, God appointed him to leave this legacy to the church. Very good. Okay, so verse 4, after he had slain Sihon and Og, king of Bashan, here Wesley says Og, with respect to him, his palace or mansion house was at Ashtaroth, and he was slain at Edrei. All right, so just keeping it real here. All right, verse 7, skip ahead a little bit, talks about the Mount of the Amorites. Turn you and take your journey and go to the Mount of the Amorites, and unto all the places nigh thereunto, was the expression, or the explanation from God. So the Mount of the Amorites, that is to the mountainous country where the Amorites dwelt, which is opposed to the plain where others of them dwelt. And this is first mentioned because it was in the borders of the land. So Wesley just seems concerned to convey to us that they have not entered the promised land. They've been moving around and dealing with people in certain geographical areas. All right, so verse 8, behold, I have set the land before you. Wesley explains in Hebrew, before you, is literally before your faces. It is open to your view and to your possession. There is no impediment in the way. All right, verse 9, the phrase at that time. So, and I spake unto you at that time, saying, I'm not able to bear you myself or alone. At that time, that is about that time, namely a little before their coming to Horeb. Okay. Verse 12, how can I myself alone bear your cumbrance and your burden and your strife? With respect to the phrase your burden, the trouble of ruling and managing so perverse a people. Your strife, your contentions among yourselves, for the determination whereof the elders were appointed. So Wesley is ragging on the Jews here, as the text itself does. Verse 15, with respect to officers, so I took the chief of your tribes, wise men and known, and made them heads over you, captains over thousands, and captains over hundreds, and captains over 50s, and captains over 10s, and officers among your tribes. Now, with respect to officers, Wesley makes clear inferior officers that were to attend upon the superior magistrates and to execute their decrees. Okay. Now, with respect to verse 16, the phrase, the stranger, 16 said, and I charged your judges at that time, saying, hear the causes between your brethren, and judge righteously between every man and his brother, and the stranger that is with him. All right, so with respect to the stranger that converseth or dealeth with him, to such God would have justice equally administered as to his own people, partly for the honor of religion, and partly for the interest which every man hath in matters of common right. So Wesley here is picking up on a trend throughout the Torah that there is a concern not only for Jews, but for the people who live among them. All right, so verse 17, the next part he explains is the phrase respect persons. So verse 17 was, ye shall not respect persons in judgment. This is a biblical phrase also found in the New Testament. In the Hebrew, it means not know or acknowledge faces. That is, not give sentence according to the outward qualities of the person, as he is poor or rich, your friend or enemy, but purely according to the merit of the cause, for which reason some of the Greek lawgivers ordered that the judges should give sentence in the dark where they could not see men's faces. I didn't know that. The judgment is God's. That's another phrase from verse 17. For the judgment is God's, and the cause that is too hard for you, bring it unto me, and I will hear it. The judgment is God's. It is passed in the name of God, and by commission from him, by you as representing his person and doing his work, who therefore will defend you therein against all your enemies, amid to whom you must give an exact account. So I think here he's parsing it out, that just because they make a decision doesn't mean that God agrees with it. Rather, they're bearing God's authority and will have to answer to him if they judge unjustly. All right, verse 18, Wesley picks on the phrase, all the things which ye shall do. And all 18 says is, and I commanded you at that time all the things which ye should do. All right, so Wesley says, I delivered unto you, and especially unto your judges, all the laws, statutes, and judgments revealed unto me by the Lord in Horeb. Okay. Verse 24, the city Eshcol is referenced, that is of grapes, so called from the goodly cluster of grapes which they brought from thence. Verse 28, he points out the word greater. Verse 28 was, whither shall we go up? Our brethren have discouraged our hearts, saying the people is greater and taller than we. So this is when the spies came back and they didn't want to go into the Holy Land. By greater, in verse 28, Wesley clarifies it means greater in number and strength and valor. Okay, I don't know how you would know that, but here it focuses on their size, the fact that they are children of the Anakim, which were a giant race left over from before the flood. Another thing Michael Heiser writes and talks about. Verse 31, the phrase, bear thee. And in the wilderness where thou hast seen how that the Lord thy God bare thee, as a man doth bear his son, and all the way that ye went until ye came unto this place. So what does it mean, bear thee? Means carried thee, as a father carries his weak and tender child in his arms, through difficulties and dangers, gently leading you, according as you are able to go, and sustaining you by his power and goodness. I wonder if this is the same Hebrew word as you shall not bear the name of the Lord your God in vain. Carry. I think that's the word nasa. It's a good word. And here it's sweet imagery of a good father carrying his tender son in his arms. And that's who the Lord was to Israel. All right, verse 32. Ye did not believe the Lord. Whoa. Yet in this thing ye did not believe the Lord your God. Okay, so they could not enter in to the promised land because of unbelief. It was not any other sin shut them out of Canaan, but their disbelief of that promise, which was typical of gospel grace, to signify that no sin will ruin us, but unbelief, which is a sin against the remedy, and therefore without remedy. That's an interesting concept. So the sin that they're guilty of, the sin that will ruin us, is just unbelief. It's a sin against the remedy. The remedy, well, in the case of Christianity, for sin and death. If you don't believe, then you can't be saved. You disbelieved your solution. Verse 33, he picks on the words, your words. So as a reminder, 33, you went in the way before you, to search you out a place to pitch your tents in, and fire by night to show you by what way you should go, and in a cloud by day. That was verse 33, your words. Somehow I missed those words, your words. This must have been transcribed incorrectly. That is to say, your murmurings, your unthankful, impatient, distrustful, and... that was verse 34. Yeah, it was mislabeled. And the Lord heard the voice of your words, and was wroth, and sware, saying. Wroth is a early modern English word from the same root as wrath. He was angry. He was wroth. He was wrath. Okay, so when the Lord heard your words, that is to say, your murmurings, your unthankful, impatient, distrustful, and rebellious speeches. So the Israelites were constantly murmuring and constantly getting in trouble for it, but they didn't stop. Just like us. All right, verse 36. It talks about Caleb under whom Joshua is comprehended, though not here expressed, because he was not now to be one of the people, but to be set over them as a chief governor. So here what I think Wesley's picking on is Caleb and Joshua were both spies sent into the promised land who came back and refused to give an ill report, whereas the other 10 said, we can't do it, they're too big, we're too weak. But in 36, it only names Caleb. Why is that? I think Wesley is saying because Joshua is addressed in just a couple verses in a different way and didn't want to conflate the two. All right, verse 37, there's the phrase, for your sakes. And verse 37 says, also the Lord was angry with me, Moses is talking, for your sakes, saying, thou shalt not go in thither. So for your sakes means upon occasion of your wickedness and perverseness by which you provoked me to speak unadvisedly. So yes, in the second time, whenever Moses is told by God to strike a rock to bring out water for the Israelites, he speaks unadvisedly, maybe even in his heart. And here Moses is blaming that on the people speaking, murmuring and muttering. Verse 38, Wesley picks on the phrase, who standeth. So that phrase was, but Joshua the son of Nun, which standeth before thee, he shall go in thither. Encourage him, for he shall cause Israel to inherit it. So what does who standeth? It's not literal. It means who is now thy servant. I'm inclined to think he was standing there, but whatever. Wesley's smarter than me. All right, verse 44, as bees. The phrase as bees. And the Amorites which dwelt in that mountain came out against you and chased you as bees do and destroyed you in Seir, even unto Hormah. So as bees which being provoked come out of their hives in great numbers and with great fury pursue their adversary and disturber. Okay, so I guess he's just explaining that for anybody who doesn't know what bees do. Okay. So we're at 27 minutes. I like to go for about an hour. So I'm going to go ahead and do chapter 2. We'll do the same thing. I'll read through chapter 2, and then we'll see what John Wesley had to say about it. So I'm enjoying it so far. I'm enjoying this coffee. All right, chapter 2. Then we turned and took our journey into the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea, as the Lord spake unto me, and we compassed Mount Seir many days. And the Lord spake unto me, saying, ye have compassed this mountain long enough, turn you northward. And command thou the people, saying, ye are to pass through the coast of your brethren, the children of Esau, which dwell in Seir, and they shall be afraid of you. Take ye good heed unto yourselves, therefore. Meddle not with them, for I will not give you of their land, no, not so much as a foot's breadth, because I have given Mount Seir unto Esau for a possession. Ye shall buy meat of them for money, that ye may eat, and ye shall also buy water of them for money, that ye may drink. For the Lord thy God hath blessed thee in all the works of thy hand. He knoweth thy walking through the great wilderness. These 40 years the Lord thy God hath been with thee. Thou hast lacked nothing. And when we passed by from our brethren, the children of Esau, which dwelt in Seir, through the way of the plain from Elath and from Ezion-Geber, we turned and passed by the way of the wilderness of Moab. And the Lord said unto me, distress not the Moabites, neither contend with them in battle, for I will not give thee of their land for a possession, because I have given Ar unto the children of Lot for a possession. The Emim dwelt therein in times past, a people great and many and tall as the Anakim, which also were accounted giants as the Anakim, but the Moabites called them Emim. The Horim also dwelt in Seir before time, but the children of Esau succeeded them when they had destroyed them from before them and dwelt in their stead, as Israel did unto the land of their possession, which the Lord gave unto them. Now rise up, said I, and get you over the brook Zered. And we went over the brook Zered. And the space in which we came from Kadesh Barnea until we came over the brook of Zered was 38 years, until all the generation of the men of war were wasted out from among the host, as the Lord sware unto them. For indeed the hand of the Lord was against them, to destroy them from among the host until they were consumed. So it came to pass, when all the men of war were consumed and dead from among the people, that the Lord spake unto me, saying, Thou art to pass over through Ar, the coast of Moab, this day. And when thou comest nigh over against the children of Ammon, distress them not, nor meddle with them, for I will not give thee of the land of the children of Ammon any possession, because I have given it unto the children of Lot for a possession. That also was accounted a land of giants. Giants dwelt therein in old time, and the Ammonites called them Zamzumim, a people great and many and tall as Anakim. But the Lord destroyed them before them, and they succeeded them, and dwelt in their stead. As he did to the children of Esau, which dwelt in Seir, when he destroyed the Horim from before them, and they succeeded them, and dwelt in their stead even unto this day. And the Avim, which dwelt in Hazarim, even unto Azah, the Caphtorim, which came forth out of Caphtor, destroyed them, and dwelt in their stead. Rise ye up, take your journey, and pass over the river Arnon. Behold, I have given into thine hand Sihon the Amorite, king of Heshbon, and his land. Begin to possess it, and contend with him in battle. This day will I begin to put the dread of thee and the fear of thee upon the nations that are under the whole heaven, who shall hear report of thee, and shall tremble, and be in anguish because of thee. And I sent messengers out of the wilderness of Kedemoth unto Sihon king of Heshbon with the words of peace, saying, Let me pass through thy land. I will go along the highway. I will neither turn unto the right hand nor the left. Thou shalt sell me meat for money, that I may eat, and give me water for money, that I may drink. Only I will pass through on my feet, as the children of Esau, which dwell in Seir, and the Moabites, which dwell in Ar, did unto me, until I shall pass over Jordan into the land which the Lord our God giveth us. But Sihon, king of Heshbon, would not let us pass by him, for the Lord thy God hardened his spirit, and made his heart obstinate, that he might deliver him into thy hands, as appeareth this day. And the Lord said unto me, Behold, I have begun to give Sihon and his land before thee. Begin to possess, that thou mayest inherit his land. Then Sihon came out against us, he and all his people, to fight at Jahaz. And the Lord our God delivered him before us, and we smote him and his sons and all his people. And we took all his cities at that time, and utterly destroyed the men and the women and the little ones of every city. We left none to remain. Only the cattle we took for a prey unto ourselves, and the spoil of the cities which we took. From Aroer, which is by the brink of the river of Arnon, and from the city that is by the river, even unto Gilead, there was not one city too strong for us. The Lord our God delivered all unto us. Only unto the land of the children of Ammon thou camest not, nor unto any place of the river Jabbok, nor unto the cities in the mountains, nor unto whatsoever the Lord our God forbade us. Thus ends the second chapter. All right, so the way it's divided up here, it's the march from Kadesh Barnea, verses 1 through 3, a charge not to trouble the Edomites, verses 4 through 8, nor the Moabites, verses 9 through 12. They pass the river Zered, verses 13 through 16, nor the Ammonites, verses 17 through 23. Then there's a command to attack Sihon, verses 24 through 26, the conquest of his kingdom, verses 27 through 37. So that's the whole chapter. Now, in verse 1, it talks about Mount Seir. Then we turned and took our journey in the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea, as the Lord spake unto me, and we compassed Mount Seir many days. Now, compass means surrounded, of course. Mount Seir, the mountainous country of Seir, or Edom. So they weren't just circling that mountain there. There's Mount Seir is the name for that region, a mountainous country, for many days. And then John Wesley stipulates, even for 38 years. So it's not just many days, it's many years. I don't know if that's clear from the text. All right, verse 3, it talks about how they went northward. Ye have compassed this mountain long enough. Turn you northward. Here he stipulates towards the land of the Amorites and Canaanites. So they had been south of the promised land. All right, verse 6, you shall buy meat of them for money that ye may eat, and ye shall also buy water of them for money that ye may drink. For long the manna did yet rain upon them. They were not forbidden to buy other meats when they had opportunity, but only were forbidden greedily to hunger after them when they could not obtain them. Okay, so that was with respect to buying meat. Now with respect to buying water, for water in those parts was scarce, and therefore private persons did severally dig pits for their particular use. So here, what happens with the Edomites and then the Moabites, they each have their regions that they're in charge of, and then they have these hundreds of thousands of Israelites coming through, which have men of war and would be intimidating. So anytime they're coming near these regions, they're saying, let us pass by. We won't mess with anything. We won't steal anything. We'll pay for everything we take. So this is just a way of showing consideration. So the concern with buying meat, whenever God established the manna for the Israelites, there was clearly God cared about how they ate and consumed. There were rules about how much they could collect on what days. And then God got mad whenever they complained wanting meat, and then he sent quail till all they could, he said, till it's coming out your nostrils. So God has been a bit touchy about food, but he doesn't seem to have a problem with them buying their own food here. All right, verse 7, the Lord has blessed thee. That was the context. For the Lord thy God has blessed thee in all thy works of thy hand. He knoweth thy walking through this great wilderness. These 40 years the Lord thy God hath been with thee. Thou hast lacked nothing. So he's talking to the people of Israel. By God's blessing thou art able to buy thy conveniences, and therefore thy theft and rapine. I haven't said that word a lot. I think that's rapine will be inexcusable, because without any pretense of necessity. So God is saying you got to pay for everything. You can't just take it because you're my holy people. I've blessed you. You need to be a blessing to the people you deal with. There's the phrase, he knoweth. That's in verse 7 as well. He knoweth thy walking through this great wilderness. He knoweth, Hebrew, he hath known, that is, observed or regarded with care and kindness, which that word often notes, which experience of God's singular goodness to thee should make thee rely on him still, and not use any unjust practice to procure what thou wantest or desirest. Okay, so that phrase, he knoweth, is meant to convey a lot more than that. He's been around. He's observed, he's regarded with care and kindness. He's been taking care of you. You wanted for nothing. You have no excuse to do wrong by these people. So verse 8, there's the phrase, we turned, and when we passed by from our brethren, the children of Esau, which dwelt in Seir, through the way of the plain of Elath, and from Ezion-Geber, we turned and passed by the way of the wilderness of Moab. So from our direct road, the Hebrew, we turned from our direct road, which lay through Edom. So they're not going to go through Edom, they're going around. So verse 9, it talks about the mountain Ar. I think Ar is a mountain. And the Lord said unto me, distress not the Moabites, neither contend with them in the battle, for I will not give thee of their land for a possession, because I have given Ar unto the children of Lot for a possession. Now Lot was, of course, the nephew of Abraham, who had children with his daughters. That was a disturbing story. Ar is the chief city of the Moabites, here put for the whole country which depended upon it. The children of Lot, so called to signify that this preservation was not for their sakes, for they were a wicked people, but for Lot's sake, whose memory God yet honors. And it's funny because Lot, he locates within Sodom and lives among that perverse generation. For a righteous man, he's tied up with unrighteous people and deeds a lot. That's an interesting thing. All right, verse 10, it talks about the Emims. Now, the Emim dwelt therein in times past, a people great and many and tall as the Anakim, which I said a minute ago were a giant race. Okay, so the Emims, men terrible for stature and strength, as their very name imparts, whose expulsion by the Moabites is here noted as a great encouragement to the Israelites, for whose sake he would much more drive out the wicked and accursed Canaanites. Okay, verse 12, the phrase, which the Lord gave. The Horim also dwelt in Seir before a time, but the children of Esau succeeded them when they had destroyed them from before them, and dwelt in their stead, as Israel did unto the land of his possession, which the Lord gave unto them. So the phrase was, which the Lord gave at the very end. Okay, so the past tense is here put for the future. Will give after the manner of the prophets. Okay, so it's saying it hasn't happened yet, but it's saying it like it has. And so it's just saying he's speaking like a prophet does. Prophets sometimes speak of future events in the past. For example, Isaiah 53, which talks about the suffering servant having already suffered, even though it was written before Jesus came and suffered for us. Verse 23, it talks about the Caphtorim. And the Avim, which dwelt in Hazarim, even unto Azah, the Caphtorim, which came forth out of Caphtor, destroyed them and dwelt in their stead. The Caphtorim were a people akin to the Philistines. He references Genesis 10, verse 14. It says they were confederate with them in this enterprise, and so dwelling together, and by degrees uniting together by marriages, they became one people, the Caphtorim and the Philistines. Okay. Caphtor, which is by the learned thought to be Cappadocia. Whether these people might make an expedition out of Egypt, either because of the report of the great riches of part of that country, which drew others thither from places equally remote, or from other reason now unknown. I bet there's been a lot of good archaeology done on this since 250 years ago when this was written. Verse 25, he picks on the phrase, under heaven. This day will I begin to put the dread of thee and the fear of thee upon the nations that are under the whole heaven, who shall hear report of thee and shall tremble and be in anguish because of thee. All right, so under heaven, the following words reign the sentence to those nations that heard of them. I think that must have been a typo. Verse 28, the phrase, on my feet. Thou shalt sell me meat for money that I may eat, and give me water for money that I may drink, only I will pass through on my feet. On my feet, or with my company who are on foot, which is added significantly because if their army had consisted as much of horsemen as many other armies did, their passage through this land might have been more mischievous and dangerous. I don't know. I guess because you'd have to take care of horses as well as people. I didn't get that. That's interesting. All right, verse 29, the phrase, as the children of Esau did. Let's see, verse 29 was, as the children of Esau which dwell in Seir, and as the Moabites which dwell in Ar did unto me, until I pass over the Jordan into the land which the Lord our God giveth us. So this is the Israelites speaking now to the Ammonites, saying, let us through. This is King Sihon. Let us through. We've already done this with the Edomites and the Moabites. This phrase, as the children of Esau did, they did permit them to pass quietly by the borders, though not through the heart of their land. And in their passage, the people sold them meat and drink, being, it seems, more kind to them than their king would have had them. And therefore they here ascribe this favor not to the king, though they are now treating with a king, but to the people, the children of Esau. Okay. Yeah, so whenever it was originally reported, I think it was in Numbers, it was clear that the king was not a fan of them coming through. But apparently the people were nicer than the king. All right, verse 30, the phrase, hardened his spirit. But Sihon, king of Heshbon, would not let us pass by him, for the Lord thy God hardened his spirit and made his heart obstinate, that he might deliver him into thy hand, as appeareth this day. So same thing with Pharaoh, of course, in Exodus. God hardened his heart or his spirit. Here, hardened his spirit, that is, suffered it to be hardened. So that's kind of... John Wesley is known as an Arminian. He wasn't a double predestination guy who double predestination pretty much says that people don't have any free will of their own, and that God makes people to sin and do evil things for his glory. John Wesley couldn't ever make any sense of that. That seemed ridiculous to him. So whenever it says God hardened his spirit, John Wesley reinterprets that to say he hardened his own spirit and God let him do it. He suffered him to do it. Verse 34, the phrase utterly destroyed, the Hebrew is cherem. And in case you missed that part in verse 34, and we took all his cities at that time and utterly destroyed the men and the women and the little ones of every city. We left none to remain. That's modern word is genocide. Utterly destroyed. By God's command, these being a part of those people who were devoted by the Lord of life and death to utter destruction for their abominable wickedness. All right, so John Wesley, I've been reading this commentary in other places. He stands behind God's genocide of the native peoples of this region. God is the Lord of life and death. That's one argument in here, and the second is that they had committed abominable wickedness in the land, so they deserved it, even their children. So if you can't tell, this is one of the things I still have a hard time reckoning with. So anyway, the final note is on verse 37, the phrase of Jabbok. Only unto the land of the children of Ammon thou camest not, nor unto any place of the river Jabbok, nor unto the cities and the mountains, nor unto whatsoever the Lord our God forbade us. Of Jabbok, that is beyond Jabbok, for that was the border of the Ammonites. So that's not going to happen yet. So we've reached the end of our section here, and I think this is as much time as I wanted to do. We're about 47 minutes, so it does pick up in some ways from here, but if you don't have the patience for dealing with place names and logistical events, it's taken me a long time to build an interest in these things. But anyway, I haven't found any trick to it. You dive in, you read it, you try and care, and then sooner or later it helps to have some maps. But if you can hold on to the details of one place and put it in dialogue with another place, finally the Bible kind of comes to life for you. If you're just jumping in with me on all this, and if you haven't read the 4 books prior to this, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, they detail God not just creating the world, but designating the salvation of the world after Adam and Eve ruin it to the people of the Hebrews, who then are exiled, slavery in Egypt, and then God liberates them and leads them through the wilderness. And now this final book of what's called the Torah, those are the 5 books of Moses. This final book is Moses giving an overview of what has happened and then trying to frame things so that they'll succeed over the coming years, which of course they do in some ways, but they really don't in a lot of others. So Christians from many traditions have a hard time caring about these details because it's not immediately pertaining to the good news of Jesus. However, there's a reason why Christians held on to the Old Testament. There's a reason why there's so many Old Testament references throughout the New Testament. So, if you haven't read the New Testament, odds are you shouldn't be reading this here with me now. But if you've been solidified in the gospel, and if your identity is in Christ, then, it is good to learn what's back here so that you understand the questions that Jesus was answering and the ways in which he fulfilled the Old Testament expectations. It's a blessed thing to spend time in the scriptures, even if they don't immediately point to Jesus. There comes a point where you see him in all of it. So I pray that this would be a blessing for you. I'm going to be doing this 3 times a day for a while. So it looks like, at least for the time being, I'll cover about 2 chapters each time, 6 chapters a day. It looks like we'll have Deuteronomy knocked out by the end of the week. Hopefully be a little bit wiser. So if anyone joins me on this, I don't know if anybody will, but God bless you. Bye.